Welcome to the WealthTech Insider. This is a podcast about wealth and technology, what's changing, what's getting overcomplicated, and what actually matters once the noise dies down. We talk about real decisions in wealth tech, the tools, the trade-offs, and the human side of trying to make change stick. If you're curious about where this space is heading, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Welcome to another episode of the WealthTech Insider. I'm your host, Danni Le Grande, and I'm really excited to be talking with one of Finura's very own clients today. Simon Backman from Wallstrom Financial Services has been a client of ours for the past 12 months, and he and his team have embarked on a really big technology project and a big overhaul. So we're going to talk through the ups and downs and the challenges, the successes as well, obviously, and the spanners in the works. And I have requested Simon gives us a warts and all view on all of it. So a bit about Simon before we get going. Simon strongly believes in the life-changing value of professional advice, and he's passionate about the difference quality advice and exceptional leadership can make to personal and business performance. Having worked in financial services for nearly 20 years in planning, business management and business consulting roles, as CEO of Wallstrom Financial Services, he's responsible for leading a team of advice professionals and supporting operational staff in delivering quality advice outcomes for their clients while maintaining a focus on business efficiency, profitability, and sustainability. And outside of work, Simon is a bit of an adventurer. He does skydiving, scuba diving, mountaineering, and a bunch of other cool stuff on the side. Hey, welcome, Simon.
Morning, Danny. Thank you for having me.
How's it going?
Yeah, good.
Eh,
Excited to start another big year, and yeah, it's all ripping ahead nicely.
Yeah, brilliant. It already seems really busy and hectic, doesn't it? A few weeks
Yeah,
in.
yeah. Christmas is a distant memory already, which is
It
a good thing.
really
Yeah.
is. So I thought it would be great to start with Wallstrom's origin story. So let's have a little chat through that, and then we'll get talking through your tech journey.
Hmm. Yeah, sure. Um, Wallstrom, or I'll refer to it as WFS, Wallstrom Financial Services, was established in around 1988 by our founding partner, Lee Wallstrom. In the early days, probably like a lot of businesses, it was a single advisor practice, and he was operating out of a sort of small sublet piece of office space and had his wife helping out in a sort of part-time admin capacity. And from those beginnings, I suppose, the business has gone through a number of sort of stages or phases of growth and evolution to get to where we are now. Today, we're a fully corporatized business model. Turnover, we expect to surpass 6 million this financial year. We've got six advisors, supported by 8 onshore operational or admin staff and 5 offshore, 5 shareholders with myself as director and CEO. We're headquartered on the Gold Coast, which is our operational hub, you could say, and we've also got a small satellite currently in Sydney. In 2022, we transitioned from a large licensee across to our own AFSL, and we're very happily operating under that model today.
Yeah, brilliant. It's such a similar story, I think, for a lot of advice firms that they've started in the garage in a small little office at home, and got bigger and moved on and done bigger and really great things. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. Have you got any personal sort of attitude, given what this is a tech podcast? Have you got any personal attitudes towards technology that you want to share before we jump in?
Yeah, look, I do, and I anticipated this question. I sort of just put a couple of bullet points down, I suppose, because I think what my attitude potentially, if you had have asked this question 18 months ago, while not significantly different, it has morphed a little bit as I've, I suppose, got a better understanding of a real tech project of significant size and scale and the implementation of that. But I think if I sort of summarize it in a few lines, I am genuinely excited by what tech can do. But at the same time, I'm not a tech for tech's sake person. I view it as a force multiplier for people, not a replacement for people.
Mm.
My preferred approach is to start with client outcome and business outcome, and then choose the simplest tech that improves consistency, efficiency, and security.
Yeah.
I feel it's essential if you want to scale a professional services firm without sacrificing quality, and that goes to Fin Services or other areas, law, accounting, I suppose, any of those. We've got 2 offices, as I mentioned before, with a mixed onshore-offshore support model, so consistency is imperative. But I suppose if I summarize it, my attitude's optimistic but practical. If it improves client experience, reduces risk, and gives our people time back, we'll lean in and we'll lean in hard, but we'll be disciplined about where tech earns its place.
Hmm. Have you sort of found through this journey, we'll probably talk about this a little bit more,
Hmm.
um, most of this has become more about people rather than, the easy bit of all of this is choosing the technology, and then the more trickier thing to navigate is people.
Yes, I definitely think that, but I'll put the caveat in: the easy piece is picking the tech when you've got a good I suppose a good consultant behind us like yourselves to help simplify that process. Picking
Hmm.
the tech can be an absolute nightmare once you go down the rabbit hole of researching what's out there. But once you actually, clear the noise, yes, 100%. And that's been the fantastic thing I think about our journey with Finura is, you've really simplified, stripped away the noise, simplified the picking the tech piece.
Hmm.
And what's happened is, I suppose that's really highlighted, yeah, you're right, the actual hardest part, I suppose, or the biggest piece of work is the people.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So let's have a look at what we did when we originally started working together. So we started with our usual discovery session. So it was
Hmm.
really great. You gave us access to most people in the firm, which was really awesome because we were able to get a really good view from everybody's lens on where those pain points and inefficiencies were taking place. So the biggest ones for you guys were manual onboarding. So the current sorry, the onboarding process back then was manual. So there was a lot of sort of back and forth communication, and document sharing between clients. Dare I say, some of that was on email.
Hmm.
Um, so, that equaled obviously a high administrative time and burden and resource allocation and all of those bits and pieces. And not to mention, I guess, increased operational risk and, those repetitive manual tasks prone to error, all those sorts of bits and pieces where you've got multiple hands, I guess, touching maybe a little bit more of a simple part of the process.
Mm.
The other big thing for you guys was the post-merge editing of your advice document. And I know this resonates with so many advice firms. So you were doing a lot of your work outside of your CRM when it came to getting your advice documents ready for your clients. There was manual checking for accuracy as well, for documentation and data entry checking, accuracy checking, and all of those sorts of things. And I think you had been through some change in the past too, so we probably came in with a little bit of resistance already with the team from a change management perspective, which we acknowledged as well. Lack of automation too. The tech stack probably wasn't as well integrated as it could have been, and you still had quite a few physical records versus digital records as well. Did I get that? Did I
Yeah.
remember that correctly?
Yes. No, I think you've hit it pretty right there.
So what we did, we had a look at through all of that, and you were already on an X-Plan site. And to your earlier point, we wanted to try and given that we had to consider that the team had a bit of change management fatigue and a bit of resistance there, we also wanted to make sure that we were making use of the tools that you already had and that people were kind of comfortable with, albeit wasn't probably being used as well as they could have. So we kept you in the X-Plan environment, but we then tacked on our Finura Advice Designer actually in this particular recommendation to help give you that nice visual for your clients, because that was the other thing I think you guys were doing too. You were wanting to have a better way of presenting that advice to your clients, and I
Yeah.
think you were doing it on a PDF and then showing that to them in the meeting on screen.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We'd I suppose to take a step back, and we might cover this in future questions in a bit more detail, but broadly, um, I had sort of sat down and, turned my head or turned my attention, I suppose, to technology, our tech stack, what we were currently using, so on and so forth. But more importantly, as I said earlier, what we wanted to achieve from any review or uplift or refresh of that. I touched on, excuse me, I touched on business outcome and client outcome.
Mhm.
And broadly, I landed on three key focal points that I really wanted to hone in on. Client experience, first and foremost,
Mhm.
enhancing that. Business efficiency, obviously, and sort of underpinning both of those or intertwined with them, sort of improve cybersecurity. So whatever we did, I wanted to sort of achieve improvement or enhancement in those three areas. Now, before we'd engaged, we were very much, I suppose, like a lot of traditional firms. You'd sort of use your X-Plan wizard, you'd get your output, you'd go through all your editing, and ultimately you'd end up with your sort of 100 to 150 page SOA. And
Mhm.
the gripes and groans about that are certainly not new, so we won't go into those. But we never ever had pushback or client complaint, but it was something that we knew inherently we could do better. So we had over the preceding sort of period, started to shift to, using our presentation screens rather than sort of, handing them the 100-page document and sort of working through flipping pages. We were doing it via PDF, but it's still 100, 150-page PDF, right? And there's a lot of noise in that.
Yeah.
I think there's probably not too many advice firms out there that, wouldn't have clients who've sort of sat there and sort of started to look fatigued at the end of one of those
Mhm.
meetings because they want to skip through all the noise and all the red tape, and they want the nuts and bolts. So we'd taken a step forward, and that was well received in and of itself. But you're 100% right. Once we sort of moved into the advice designer piece, which was, I think, the first sort of tech we ran out of your recommendations, mainly because of sort of the excitement through the advisor lens when they saw the demo, and what I kind of felt it could achieve for us in that client experience base straight up. And that was a real game changer.
Yeah, brilliant. Actually, just stepping back a bit, I do remember coming to meet you for the first time, and I love how methodical you are. You really had categorized and identified those swim lanes, I guess, where you really wanted to focus on and put a lot of detail into that thought before you even engaged us, which I guess probably helped us, just get the ball rolling really quickly because you really knew
Mm.
where you those areas that needed the focus. So even with Advice Designer, obviously, we love it. It's Finura's product, simple to use, all those sorts of things. But that in and of itself was change management, right, for your team. You still had to get everybody on board. We still had to sort of get some beta testing going and get a few clients in there and tweak some bits and pieces and all of those sorts of things. How are the team going now with Advice Designer versus, where they first started?
Yeah, look, obviously, the more you use something, the sort of deeper you dive into it, the better you get at it, right? At the end of the day, that's the reality of, I think, most things in tech and in life. I think
Mhm.
if you sort of look at it and say, "Yep, that's really cool," but you tend back into what you've done, because maybe you're a little bit busy at a time and you know it, and you sort of don't want to step outside your comfort zone, that can get kicked down the road forever. There's never, I don't think, well, if you're a busy business,
Mhm.
which hopefully everyone is, there's you can always find an excuse. There's never
Yeah.
a perfect time. So we had, as you know, we were looking at it sort of at the start of the year. We did the setup work, and I will say that was fantastic. Dipple and the team, really got in hands on, and assisted with that. So it was great. It wasn't just you're in the deep end, find your own way,
Mhm.
which some providers can be. So that was fantastic in and of itself. But in terms of the team, I had advisors who'd seen particularly that digital SOA, which, as I mentioned before, it's a game changer. It's fantastic. Sort of the interactivity with clients, being able to scale projections and things like that real time with them in a meeting. It's fantastic. So I had them on the one side saying, let's go, we want this. The quicker we can get to that, the quicker we're away from this sort of cumbersome document. But then we had, the back end. And as I've mentioned, we're a mixture of on and offshore. So we have in-house paraplanning, but we also have outsourced paraplanning for overflow. So, we had to get both sides of that equation across the functionality, how it works. There are some differences, but ultimately, they are positive. The outcome has really been fantastic. But like we had a real spike in kind of new business workflow at around that time. And then sort of that, it was okay, well, let's get through this. And, that was sort of the feedback I was getting. Look, let's just get on top of this with the tech we know, and then we'll move to it. But by then you're into sort of the run into June 30. And as I say, your June 30 is busy, or the end of financial year sort of planning. And then there's next to next to next. So at some point, you really need to rip the Band-Aid. There is one other element I'll add to that, which was a luxury for me in this firm, I suppose. And that goes to more broader tech implementation that we'll touch on. And that's having a kind of key person or a champion or a project owner. And, I have an advisor who, was in my in-house paraplanning team who's progressed into advice. And so he had that kind of excitement through the advisor lens, but also the experience in the actual plan preparation. And he was sort of ready and willing to take over and champion that internally and sort of, drive the training piece forward. And that really helped.
Then this is what is so critical to success of technology projects. It's not just here's your logins, off you go, do a couple of training sessions. It really has taken us 12 months, right, to just to get to a point where, you can now use the next 12 months to settle in and this becomes your BAU. But I think having yourself, obviously, as a CEO in the firm, to make sure that people are held accountable, give people deadlines, make sure that things don't of course, June 30 comes up and we're all busy, but, keeping people on track internally is so, so important. And that's where we certainly see the biggest successes with technology implementations. Alrighty, let's move on to the next one. And another big one that obviously ties in with client engagement was thinking about how you were going to interact with your clients into the future in a more engaging, a more contemporary and modern way, but also in a more secure way as well. And also using a system that we didn't want to sort of silo and put on the side and not have it integrated with the rest of your technology stack. So we put My Prosperity in the technology recommendations for you. So the reasons from our perspective that we did that was because it does integrate through into Xplan. So we're seeing that nice data flow from onboarding through to advice. And also we know that it's a really specific client engagement tool. That's all it does. It's a client portal, but it does it pretty well. So talk us through, again, this was a really big thing for the firm, right? This is another parallel project that we had to run and get the advisors used to doing things in a different way, but also most importantly, your clients needed to understand a different way of working with you. And I love the way that you championed this internally. So talk us through that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose thinking back to those three broad focal points: efficiency, client experience, and cybersecurity. My Prosperity, primarily through the portal component, but there are other layers of functionality, some of which we haven't yet brought into play, but do intend to. But it really kind of has a role to play in all three of those. So, as you alluded to earlier, we were, and I think like a lot of firms still at this point in time, were, sending correspondence via password protected documents and email. Once upon a time that was, viewed as secure. In the modern day and age, sort of as technology has evolved and probably more worryingly as has cyber crime evolved, it is now sort of viewed as a high risk activity, even, with password protection. So that's something that we certainly, wanted to move away from. In addition to that, we've got sort of that fact find data collection component of it. So, previously when we were doing, risk profile fact finding, data collection, those things that'd be done by advisor in meeting on a paper fact find, or even if it was done sort of on a editable PDF, either way. But what would happen is that'd get sent to, one of our administration team who would then go through, the data entry process.
Mm-hmm.
6 advisors, just as an example, but they've all got different handwriting. Some of them are like sort of doctor's sprawl, some of them are quite neat. But whenever you've got those variabilities, there's room for sort of, error on data entry. So we didn't get a lot of it, but, it was there as a risk factor. So that was certainly something, we wanted to, improve and de-risk. And then obviously, the sharing of documentation, particularly sensitive documentation with clients, we wanted to move away from, that emailing piece. So yes, you recommended My Prosperity. We that was quite an interesting one because it was a big step change in terms of, well, I say it is still rolling through, but it's a significant step change in the way we interact with clients. So we had to make sure that before we did it, it wasn't just a, hey, here's a new toy, shiny toy. We went through a very deliberate and strategic communication strategy, starting sort of, I think, 6 or 9 months out from when we started importing the first clients, just sort of explaining that, we are working on a new solution. These are the reasons. We really focused that client communication in on the security side. This is about you, about keeping your data and your information secure. There are certainly efficiencies that we have gained out of it, but in the client lens, obviously you're focusing on the benefits to them. And then by the time we actually got to go live, particularly our, which we sort of focused the first phase of rollout on our ongoing fee service clients, they were waiting for it. They knew it was coming. They were well educated. We did a little bit of work with the My Prosperity team around, building out some branded documents and videos around this is how you register or activate your portal. This is what to expect. This is how to go in and find a document once we put it in, so on and so forth. And that sort of really, I suppose, fed into, the success that you sort of mentioned in terms of, as we've gone live with it.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing we did also is, there's like, I suppose, a lot of pieces of tech, but this one in particular, there's different capabilities in it. And what we did, I know this isn't the way all firms go, but I think you really have to assess this depending on your size of client, the number of clients you're rolling out to, the number of people in your team that are dealing with those clients. More complex, I think the team structure and things work on the business side, the more benefit you get out of streamlining how you roll something out on the client side.
Mm-hmm.
So I made the decision, rather than going sort of all in with all functionality, we rolled out purely with focus on getting our CSO, our ongoing fee clients set up first, getting them activated and getting them used to document sharing. Then sort of roll into, we were using a different third party digital fact find, et cetera, that was syncing to Xplan. Obviously we don't want multiple texts, so we're moving that into My Prosperity. Same benefits. So fact find gets done online. We don't have manual data entry anymore. It's synced straight into Xplan. So there's no, is that a 6 or an 8 from that advisor's handwriting? It's in and it's accurate. But what we've done is we've held back layers of functionality. We've told the clients there's more functionality coming, but that'll be done in a very strategic way as they're comfortable with what we've already rolled out.
Yeah, that's great. And this also really necessitated a process review, right? So we needed to
Yes.
figure out where the portal was going to be used throughout the advice journey. So client onboarding, implementation, reviews. Specifically, I guess that's where the portal has sat with you guys.
Yes.
So that was another big part of the project, right? You really need to probably start at your processes before you start anywhere else.
Yeah.
And I do love the way you communicated with your clients. There's no surprises for them. They were fully prepared for the changes in the way that they were being communicated with. Have you had any pushback from clients at all on the portal?
No, look, probably maybe one or two. We've got in our client base, we've got, I could count them on one hand, a handful of or less of aged clients who aren't tech savvy, a couple that don't even have an email address. So the
Yeah,
whole emailing password protected wasn't even an issue with them anyway.
yeah,
But the reality is, as time goes forward, those numbers are decreasing. They're minimal. We did get one or two that sort of, it's tech, it's an app overlay. We're not interested. It's just another thing I've got access and worry about. Quite interestingly, I don't know if I've even spoken to you about this, but Chris and I have made a decision recently because it does play a significant role in that cybersecurity functionality. So what we are actually doing for the clients, and it wouldn't be again, I could count them on one hand, but there have been a few, and look, I think they're no different to staff, right? Some people just don't like change. They get in a
hmm
habit of a certain thing. But what we are going to do for those clients is actually implement as part of their review. It will have, when their review swings round, we'll have one more push. And if they don't, we're actually going to implement almost kind of a waiver sign off. So, I have been offered this. I've been explained, the risks around and recommendations from cybersecurity sort of experts, et cetera, around emailing sensitive documents. And I have specifically declined or working on the wording, but essentially it is an acknowledgement that they've been offered it, we've recommended, we've explained the risks, and they've specifically requested to have things emailed.
Oh, I
So,
love that. So they're opting out of a
yep.
more secure
Yeah,
way of
and
having, yeah.
essentially, if there's ever an issue, they want to push back. Well, look, we had a solution. We gave you all this explanation and education.
Mm,
You've chosen not to, particularly if that data is breached on their end. Well, that's on you now.
yeah,
Yeah. So,
yeah,
and
that's
and look,
brilliant.
I honestly think this is going way back in time. There was an old insurance advisor. This goes back probably 15 years, but he worked in an accounting firm. And sort of where this idea came from was, the accountant would refer clients to the insurance advisor. But if a client declined, the accountant would actually get them to I've been offered to have advice around this, and he put it on red paper. Look, it was an old school sales technique essentially, but the
hmm
same concept applies, right? Like I've said to Chris, I honestly believe, say we've got 5 clients who've just, dug their heels in and gone, no, I'm not doing it. I reckon as soon as we get to the review and say, we'll sign this, I'd be surprised if 3 of the 5 don't register, activate straight away and move forward.
Yeah,
And then, so be it. If there's a couple that don't, you can't sort of force them.
yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely. That is so good because you're covering yourselves, which, and you're doing the right thing by making sure you've got good cybersecurity systems in place. And you're really explaining to the client why this is really, really important and they should be actually listening to the most important thing of all of it. I love that.
Mm. Mm.
Alrighty, now moving on to the, I guess the next final big piece. We did some agent work, so we did some
Yes.
work in Copilot and did some AI stuff, which was pretty cool. So we ended up doing quite a few agents from
Mm.
memory. We did a
Yeah.
strategy meeting file note agent. We did a first meeting agent. We did a power planning request form, discovery meeting, discussion paper meeting, and SOA presentation meeting agents. Did
Correct.
I get them all? I think that was all of
Yes,
them.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was excellent. We sort of, embarked on that AI journey together, and there was some iterations that sort of happened throughout that process as well. So we again probably treated this like a little bit of a mini tech a tech project in
Oh,
itself.
definitely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this was change again for the way that advisors were doing things. And do you remember at the beginning we had a little bit of resistance from some of the advisors, and
Yeah.
recording meetings was going to be a problem, and the clients weren't going to be happy. There was some of these sort of typical resistance that you would get using something
Yeah.
new like AI in those situations. So how are we doing with the agents? Are they doing their job?
Really good. Do you mind? I think this is like this is a standout piece. I suppose they all are. They've all added huge value in different ways. The different recommendations and what we've done. But what I'll sort of take a step back in time to even pre yourselves, because interestingly, this piece in and of itself, well, two pieces actually. This and the looking at a digital fact find solution were, I think, the probably primary drivers where I started to tip over into that rabbit hole I spoke of, where you can just get overwhelmed
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the various solutions out there, so on and so forth. But in this area specifically, so when I came to the firm. I joined the firm in 2017, and pretty much from day dot, there was a pretty good process in terms of the old, I suppose, archaic way of file notes was you'd either scan them if you're a handwriter, or you type them, and that was a bit laborious and time consuming into whatever your CRM was. For us, it was Xplan. Um, and our firm had already evolved forward a step from that. So our team had set up everyone on their phone, had an app for digital voice recording. When they sat down, they'd open whatever, whether it was their notes, the fact find, if it was a discussion strategy paper, meeting strategy paper, and their notes, and they'd start, click record, they'd record their file note. And we had it all set up, a couple of clicks of the button, and that'd go to an outsourced provider who had a team of people who'd plug the earpiece in and transcribe, human transcription, and they'd send it back. Now, for us, nothing moves in our business until that's kind of one of our internal governance, I suppose, measures or quality control measures. Nothing goes forward in our process, no matter whether it's discovery, discussion, or particularly off the back of an SOA meeting, implementation doesn't happen until that file note's in the system. Now, the outsourced or the original provider we were using, they had a 36-hour, up to, not always, but up to 36-hour turnaround service standard. And we estimate we were getting about 90% accuracy back. So most of the issues we're seeing were sort of, specific words, potentially, or probably more so grammar,
Mm-hmm.
commas, where it should be a new paragraph, things like that. And some advisors don't mind that stuff. They'll just copy and paste in because the context of the note is still discernible. But others are sticklers for those things. So then they'd sit and do 10 or 15 minutes. But either way, at a 90% accuracy, it's not a copy paste into your CRM. You still have to review it, read it, check it. Now, that was all good because for me, it was great. It was a step forward. It was efficient. It was working, but we still had this 36-hour downtime from sort of one point in our process or our workflow to the next. So one of the things when I started looking into tech, one of the first things I started looking at was that. Now, step one for us, I suppose, like every service provider, prices went through the roof sort of over the last few years. And we were spending probably $27,000 to $30,000 a year in transcription costs, okay, human transcription. So I started looking at apps and tech to see if we could get that automated a little bit, and not that cost was the driver. It was more about, can we bring back that 36-hour sort of downtime, and if possible, improve the accuracy. So I tried a heap of apps out of the Apple App Store. We just Chris was sort of my test dummy. We were getting anything from sort of 75 to that 90% accuracy, but it just wasn't improving. It wasn't getting any better. We weren't overly happy with it. I then found a piece of AI, which at a cost of, across my 6-person team, approximately $2,000 a year. Where you could drop your audio recording in, record straight into it if you're at your computer, or if you did it on your phone, you could drop it in later. And it was turning those file notes around. A 30-minute file note, it'd turn around in 3 minutes, with, we sort of reckon, about 95, 96% accuracy at about $2,000 a year for the firm.
Mhm.
So win-win, fantastic. Expense line comes down. We've knocked out that 36-hour potential sort of downtime, and everything starts moving, really well, which is great. So we're all really happy with that. Then Finura comes into play and says, "Hey, maybe we can do better with, or yourself with, Copilot and smart use of agents." So we did our agent project. The issue that we had was, an average file note, and this might shock some people, but I do pride myself, and our advisors do pride ourselves on the quality of the file noting. That's ultimately what's going to save you if you ever have a client issue or not. And an average file note, depending on the person in our team, is from 20 to 30 minutes. So Chris is 30 minutes, up around there per meeting. So that's still time, even though the tool is turning it around quickly, that's still time that he's spending recording, right? And what we found as well is that when you've got to sit down and record like that, when you're on the hop through the day, so it's, that they're banking up, and what you'll end up doing is sitting down on a Friday afternoon and nailing them all out, or late in the day. And, that in and of itself, while it was working, it actually slows down, because, if you've done 5 meetings between the meeting you're recording and that, you've got to get your head back in the space of that, right? So, fast forward, we engaged on this sort of agent piece, and, we have now got that down to, we're recording the meetings live, as you mentioned, and, click, drag and drop, click of the button, and we've got our file note. And I would say literally from meeting close, extracting transcript, to file note going in CRM, you're probably sub 3 minutes on the lot.
Wow.
So I'm estimating, but across the 6-person advice team, all meetings that are done a year, we're around 550 hours of time saved that was dictating, that can now be turned into productivity just from that piece alone.
Across all advisors.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's
As in
excellent.
across the team, yeah. And that's potentially I've taken that on a conservative note. I haven't run it all at the 30-minute sort of Chris's, but you average 8 to 10 meetings a week across firsts, reviews, strategy meetings and SOAs, and you multiply that out over a sort of 48-week year, and take your 20 to 25 minutes as an average, that stacks up really, really quickly.
I think that's a great way to look at it too. This isn't just a per meeting thing. This is across all clients across a
Absolutely.
period of time. And it's, I love how methodical you are, and I love the analysis you do on this stuff. It's really good. I have no doubt you've put a lot of time into making sure that, there is value and return on investment for all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like you said, there was resistance at the start, and it was just simply, so it was probably 2 things. One was, oh, hang on, clients are now gonna, get recorded. And I think you were there. I got, one of the few times I sort of put my foot down and got pretty short on this one. But the reality is, you call your bank, you call your energy provider,
Yeah.
you call your telco, anyone you call in this day and age, it's recorded, right? We've all heard that, quality and data training purposes.
Yeah.
And as I said to the guys, it's just another iteration of that. There's not going to be any issue around it, I guarantee you. And to be honest, I've asked, there hasn't been one piece of pushback despite the initial concerns. And the second one was, the guys who were used to these sort of, 30-minute long-winded dictations, we brought it back. We built very specific an agenda, very specific file note template that we want that to feed into with the agent in between, but they're concise, definitely. And that was something they had to get their head around. It's like, oh, it doesn't look as meaty. It's not 4 pages,
Yeah.
But we
But
sent it
that
off.
was also part of the iteration process too, wasn't it? We did end up putting a little bit, we're getting the agent to put a little bit more substance in there, because I think
Yeah,
originally it was probably a little bit too light on, but that was the whole point of iterating on them.
correct. And, I sent it off to our external compliance consultant and, his feedback was, yeah, like if that comes through as a file audit, I'm not calling that out. Everything's there.
Hmm.
So yeah, can't complain on that. As soon as that feedback came, the guys were bang on. Yeah, like they were fine.
Yeah, amazing. That's so good to hear. I'm really pleased that they've made, I mean, it's probably arguably one of the biggest time efficiencies across the board.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And all boring stuff, right? None of this is super cool. And I think we deliberately sort of sat in that Microsoft environment too, because it was nice and secure, and
Mm,
that I think that gave comfort to the guys as well. That were once that was explained to them that it was a secure way of taking the notes, and probably a way that you can explain to the clients in an easy way that this is a safe way of getting those recordings. That's awesome to hear.
absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, I've got 3 pop questions for you before we finish up. So what was the hardest thing about the tech change?
Oh, okay. Not choosing the tech. Um, I think we touched on that earlier. Choosing the tech was pretty easy, especially with your guidance and assistance. I'd say change management. So,
Mhm.
getting consistent adoption across sort of advisors, admin, both on and offshore, and then offshore sort of getting that on and offshore working coherently. That requires repetition, training,
Yeah.
and clear ownership. So I think the change management, we're all busy. So sort of even, the best tool and advice designer was great. It can feel like one more thing if it's not embedded into a
Yeah.
sort of, simpler workflow that everyone understands. And I think the turning point probably in terms of my learning was focusing on behavior and process first,
Mhm.
then using the tech to make the right way the easy way, if that
Yeah.
makes sense, rather than
Yeah.
trying to make the tech the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think probably that's where I'd say that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great, and probably very normal with tech as tech change as well. Did anything surprise you about the technology change?
Two things I can call out here, I reckon. The how much impact small changes had.
Hmm.
Even sort of just down to the little 1%ers. You don't need. We didn't. And I don't think anyone now through sort of going through this process. We didn't need one giant sort of silver bullet solution.
Hmm.
Incremental improvements, really compounded into genuine capacity gains.
Yeah.
And secondly, I was surprised by how much the client experience improved from changes that they actually don't see.
Yeah.
So, better internal workflows, secure document handling, consistent comms, cadence, that makes our processes more efficient. As I said, we've chopped out a 36-hour downtime from sort of, meeting file note to next steps in the process. And that makes the overall process feel smoother and more professional. Yeah.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
I honestly, I don't think clients care what software you
No.
use. What they feel speed, clarity, and confidence. So,
Hmm.
they don't notice the tool, they notice the experience it creates is the best
It's
way to.
translated from using the tool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you learned any lessons or any tips for anybody thinking on going on a technology transformation program in their
Yeah.
financial advice firm?
Lots. Probably if I think about it, the bigger ones, biggest lesson's probably that it's actually not about the tech itself. It's
Hmm.
about the outcomes.
Yeah.
So sort of in our world, outcomes are consistency, speed, security, better client experience. Sort of touched on all them at the start. So sort of, yeah, those outcomes are what it's really about. Um, Additionally, maybe integration and adoption
Hmm.
matter more than chasing best in class kind of solution, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If you got really good software, but your stack's fragmented, it's not integrating well, or the team doesn't adopt it well or consistently, you're not going to get your optimum return on investment.
Yeah.
Yeah, prioritize single source of truth, fewer systems doing more.
Hmm.
And as we touched on earlier, clear ownership and champion of each part of the workflow and implementation.
And that last point, that kind of keeps everybody involved, right? And keeps everybody feeling like they're being listened to and heard, and they're part of the transformation rather than, being dictated to, this is what we're using now, and that's it.
Yeah,
They've really all had a say in how it looks and feels.
yeah. I genuinely believe now, sort of wealth tech should be treated. It's a capability that, well, I say you, our view now is, or my view is, it's a capability that we're going to build over time.
Mhm.
Process, people, data, and security. All of those things will continue to improve. It's not just software you purchase.
Mhm.
Yeah, and as we've already spoken about, look, I think, you know, touching back, a lot of firms, that they view stuff like this as an expense.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that can be a roadblock to getting started right from the start. Wow,
Yeah.
that's going to cost a bit. We've thrown a bit at this,
Mhm.
um, but to us, our sort of mindset's completely. This is an investment, in our business and our future growth. If we get this right, it'll underpin the next sort of 4 or 5 years. There'll be M&A, that we'll be looking at, so on and so forth. But if we're tidy and neat in-house, that will really support that, and it'll make us an attractive partner for businesses to
Yeah.
potentially, want to merge in.
So
Yeah.
it's enabling all of the future aspirations of the
Yeah.
business, rather
Yeah.
than just a line item on your P&L that's a bit of a pain that you have to pay for every 12
Correct.
months. Yeah.
But I also don't think, I think probably, and a final point, for me, other businesses may sort of see it differently, but I would hazard a guess that, other businesses, if they actually embark on the process like, we have with Finura, they'll ultimately, I think, come to the same thought at the end of the day. Like this cycle, it's not a one and done.
Mhm.
So, we're going to do this. The instructions to yourselves was very clear. We intend on embarking on an M&A journey. We want the work that we do, the systems, the processes that we implement, not just to support the now, but to support what our plans are over that sort of next 4 to 5. But I ultimately think that, we're going to end up going through the cycle again, because just the rate of change of tech, of advancement, it's running exponential. So, by the time we've sort of made a couple of mergers or purchases, I really think it'll be sort of back to, okay, let's review the stack again. Let's review the processes.
Mhm.
Are they still relevant to where we are now if we're 2 or 3 times the size? And then we start the journey again, continue
Yeah.
evolving, continue improving
Yeah. So it's been an attitude change probably, as
massively.
well, as anything. Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you, Simon, so much for joining me today. I really love that conversation, and it's been wonderful working, with you and the Wallstrom crew. And I'm,
Mm.
really proud of what you have all achieved and are continuing to achieve. And thank you, listeners, for joining us for another episode of the WealthTech Insider. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Perfect. That's it for this episode of the WealthTech Insider. If today's conversation got you thinking about your own technology setup, what's working, what's clunky, or what's quietly slowing things down, we've built a technology health check you can find on our website. It's a practical way to understand where you're at with tech and where it makes sense to focus without turning it into a major project straight away. If the episode was useful, feel free to share it or subscribe for future conversations, and thank you for listening.